G'day guys, welcome to the AFL Things YouTube channel. This is my brand new YouTube channel. Now my name on YouTube is still going to be Just Cause, but my logo is AFL Things. Change my channel and we're going to do some different videos on this channel. We're not going to keep it the old content I used to do. And to start with, we're going to be doing an AFL, my Port Adelaide AFL list review. So let's begin, and we're going to start with a couple of the players who I just feel like are either on the outer or probably won't play next year. So Trent McKenzie was on the outer this year. I just feel like he's one that's going to probably retire or will get delisted. Probably more likely to retire. And Tom Cleary, unfortunately, I think has played maybe 2 games in the last 2 years at Port Adelaide. Probably out of his last 50 games, he's played 4 at AFL level. So, I just think Trent McKenzie's been too injury-ridden. Tom Cleary, I just don't think we'll get a spot next year. Some other players, Jeremy Finlayson, if I can find him. I'm going to put him and Sam Powell-Pepper in below expectation. Now, this might seem harsh, but the below expectation is really for people who either didn't hit the standard this year or have been injured. So I didn't want to have another tier below on the outer of an injury tier, because like you're rating players off their season and you can't help if you get an injury. Or they can't help if they get an injury. So I can't put everyone who's had an injury this year, because that's probably half the list that's been sore in that tier. Travis Boak, for me, is going into consistent contributor. Yes, he had a poor performance in the prelim final, but I don't think that warrants him to go down or up any further than what he already was. Now, there's 2 players who I think potential is yet to be reached. Jace Burgoyne, we saw it late in the final series. Of course, there's another Burgoyne that pops up in the finals and does well. And the other one is Josh Sinn. Now, Josh Sinn's been very injury-ridden. Probably wasn't known to a lot of the people who don't support Port Adelaide. Josh Sinn, goes under the radar. And when he does play at Port Adelaide, I think he played 5 games this year, had an average of about 13 touches, just under 13 touches, 12.8 I think it was. When he has played, he's actually been a pretty good contributor to the side. So I don't think he's one that Port look past this off-season. I think we keep him. I think he's got great development. Kane Farrell, solid and consistent again, I think. Once again, does a lot of the kickouts for us. Key cog now that I'm filming this on the 24th of September, so the Tuesday, and this was the day where Port Adelaide had started their exit meetings, and it's been announced that Dan Houston has requested a trade just today, about 5 hours ago, as of filming this, back to Victoria. So he's going to become a key cog next year in defence, Kane Farrell, without Dan Houston. Todd Marshall, occasional impact, I think I'm going to put him in. Concussions is a real issue now for him. His mental health is going to have to come first next year, I think. Maybe he won't play as many games next year due to the concussion. And instead of missing 1 week with the concussion, now he might have to miss 2 or 3. 19 games this year. But I just felt like he could have done better as well, Todd Marshall. Yes, you can't help getting injured or having a concussion, but I just felt like he could have done better. Ryan Burton is occasional impact as well. Brian Burton, to me, is one of those people who could have a really, really good game 1 week and a really, really bad game the next week. So, for me, Ryan Burton's a bit of an interesting one. He can have some really good games. He can also have some really poor games where he just doesn't do anything, or he kicks at the opposition, or just does something really silly that didn't really need to happen. Next up, who are we going to go with? Ivan Soldo. It's a tough decision, Ivan Soldo, but I'm going to put him in below expectation. I think he's a man that I've come to the realisation over the last week, and now he's officially released, said in the exit meeting today at Port Adelaide that he wanted to get a trade back to Victoria. And I've just found he doesn't, how do you describe this? I don't want it to sound like I'm giving him shit, but I kind of am at the same time. The first 4 or 5 weeks when he arrived at the club, he was really, really good. He was around the club, he was around the boys. But apparently, he's been missing training ever since he got injured. He's been going back to Melbourne. He's been Going back to Melbourne, he hasn't got around the boys. For example, if someone's had a milestone, or like last night, the Brownlow medal was on last night. A lot of the players congratulated players from the Port team. He just doesn't, I don't feel like he's a part of the culture very well, Ivan Sold, unfortunately, and I just don't think he wants to be at Port Adelaide. I really think that he would have much preferred last year to stay in Victoria. If that wasn't for Richmond, it could have been for someone else. But it is, unfortunately for Ivan, I just don't think that he's very connected to the group. I just think you look at the 45 or 44 players we have in our squad, AFL and Sanford, and you just feel like he's that little P that's just slipped away a little bit. So, disappointing. Who else is there? Willie Rioli, occasional impact. I think he's been good, but once again, pretty similar to Ryan Burton. He just swings in and out of games. He can have a really good game one week, a really poor game the next. Ollie Wines, solid and consistent. I think some of his form this year, Ollie Wines, was back to his Brownlow best. Other games probably wasn't up to standard. Well, not standard, I won't say standard. I think that's a bit harsh, but others probably weren't where he would like to be. Mitch Georgiades, I'm going to put him in solid and consistent contributors. I think he's had a pretty decent year. Mitch Georgiades has been our best forward since coming back from an ACL. You look at it this year with Marshall getting a bit injured, Finlayson having a lacerated spleen late in the year. Ollie Lord hasn't played much footy, 3 games I think this year for Port. So it's been a real lacklustre forward line. Charlie Dixon getting into the back stages, probably ending his career this year. So he's been real good. Mitch Georgiades probably flown under the radar a little bit when you talk about the Port forwards. He's one who's really stood out to me. Alira, I'm going to put in occasional impact. It's tough for a defender to rank a defender, but I think that he's been pretty good. Alira, if we look at 24 matches, he's played I think every game this year possible. And he's been that interceptor once again. I know we brought in players like Brendan Zerk-Thatcher, Savra Adelaide, but I feel like Brendan Zerk-Thatcher's been very good this year, and I'm also going to put him in occasional impact. I feel like he's been very good once again. Jordan Sweet, I'm going to put in yet to reach potential because I think he's got a big upside, Jordan Sweet. I really do. He had a game against Hawthorn in the semi-final with 52 touches. Hit-outs, and he beat Brodie Grundy as well in the prelim in terms of hit-outs. Brodie probably beat him around the ground, but I thought he was quite good. Dylan Williams, we're going to put in development, I think. He's a player that could really be in the 23 in a couple of years' time and make a solid spot in there, but he probably just hasn't had a very good run. 5 matches this year, 10 disposals, and he's that player of half-back that we could probably use next year if Dan Houston does leave, to be honest. I think he'd be that sort of player we could use. Lockie Charleston. Is going in development. Willem Drew, once again, the Drewy, solid and consistent contributor. He's been one of those players this year. Now, where I put them on this doesn't really matter. It's not in a specific order, so don't really worry. Don't think, because Tom Cleary's bottom of the list and Trevor Spoke's top, that means that's the best and that's the worst. It doesn't mean anything to do with that. A Savra Adelaide, occasional impact. I'm trying to whip through these because, one, I don't want to sit here for half an hour and ramble on about stuff you guys probably don't care about. Considering this is going to be the first video back on the channel, I don't want it to be a shit one and one that I'm sitting here for too long. Let's go down further. Development. Tom Anastasopoulos, once again, I think he's another development player. Ollie Lord. Where do I put Ollie Lord? I think potential yet to be reached for Ollie Lord. I think you look at his games this year, 6 matches, kicked 6 goals, kicked 4 in a qualifying final last year against Brisbane in the Port loss where he went out in straight sets. So he's got plenty of upside, and I think now that Charlie Dixon's retired, he could be, in exclamation marks, a key cog to Port Adelaide. I just think, though, he needs a bit more development. And I do think that he's got plenty of potential, but the question is he good enough for the AFL squad next year? I don't think so. If we're going to bring in Jack Lukosius and Dixon retires, I just think that would be a straight swap. Thomas Scully, I'm going to put in development. There's been talk about him playing in the AFL side this year, but he didn't end up getting a chance to. At 19 years old, I just think you look at him and you say, probably not ready for AFL level yet. I think he's had some really good games in the Sandfield, but I don't think he's quite ready for the AFL level. Darcy Byrne-Jones, I moved him while I was talking there, but I'm putting him in occasional impact as well. I just think he's been one of those players, Darcy Byrne-Jones, that you can't get a read on. Like, he finished the year at halfback, he played most of the year forward, he had a really good game against Hawthorn where he kicked the winning goal in with the second to go. A famous win, and probably the most underrated game of the year, I have to say. Heaps of people, when you talk about the game of the year, don't talk about that one. Probably because it was a wet day, irrelevant time slot on a Sunday. But it was a really, really good goal. But Byrne-Jones in general, I just think, in and out season. Now, this is going to be controversial. Francis Evans. I'm going to put him in occasional impact as well. I just think he's the harder one to rank, I reckon. Him and McEntee and the like are the hardest to rank because you don't really know 100% where you're going to slide them in. Will Lorenz, who we've seen a bit, and Tom McCallum I'm also putting in development. I think a lot of these players who've played a lot of the year in the Sandfield go in development. Now, I probably didn't have to rank these players. I didn't have to rank players that have played 0 games, but I'm going to anyway. Starts as sub for 2 matches. I think he came on against Hawthorn and had 4 touches at 87% or something. Will Lorenz. So he's a bright future, I think, in the Port side. If you look at the midfield right now, he probably wants to play midfield, but I also think he can be flexible and play forward. Could be one of those Jason Horne-Francis types in future years, Will Lorenz, and play a behind the ball role maybe, like Jason Horne-Francis did against Melbourne late in that game that we won against Melbourne at the MCG in round 21. He could be that sort of player as well, I think. Dante Vicentini. I remember one game wholeheartedly where he played against Geelong in Cardinia Park this year, and I thought he was really, really good. He smashed Stanley, and then I actually remembered that game and went into the qualifying final against Geelong confident, thinking Stanley's crap, Blitzavs is crap. We can go in there with Sweet and win. Sweet playing really well. But in the end, that didn't end up happening. Hugh Jackson. He's actually my favourite Sandfield player, Hugh Jackson. Kyle Marshall. I think Kyle Marshall and Tom McCallum are probably 2 that will be on the delisted list at the end of the year. I just think they'll hire draft picks in the 50s, 40s, I think late 40s and early 50s. So I think when you have that higher draft pick, I don't think you're going to keep them for very long, especially if they didn't play AFL in their first year. Jed McEntee, I'm going to put in development. I think we probably Port Adelaide, if I'm the list manager, I think we delist one of our small forwards, whether that's McEntee, Evans or Narkle. I think out of the 3, I think one of them will be delisted. I just think we have too many of those types that are just one-way runners and they offer us all the same stuff. So I know Narkle started all this year as the sub, but I think out of the 3 of them, Narkle's the most likely to stay next year in terms of not being delisted. I think it's between Evans and McEntee, and I think McEntee plays a role for us. So I think I could definitely see Evans on the outside next year. Even though I put him in the occasional impact tier, I just think he could have a look in next year. Quentin Narkle, I'm also going to put an occasional impact. I think if I put Evans in there, I think Narkle overall has had a better year. I know he's played sub a lot more. I know Evans has probably played more footy than him on the ground this year in terms of game time. But I do think that he's played a real key role for us. Xavier Walsh is also going in development this year. Jackson Mead. Now, this is an interesting one, Jackson Mead. Because personally, I think he's been... It sounds weird here, having him above players like Marshall, Rioli, Alir, Zerkatcher, Radagalier. I'm looking down here, by the way, because that's where the screen is. I'm looking on the screen. And you can probably tell it's an iPad because I'm screen recording off it. But... yeah, I think it sounds weird that I'm putting Jackson Mead above those couple, but it's different. So don't come to me in the comments after and say, why have you put Mead above Alir and the likes? Because Alir's a different player. Alir's a defender. And in footy, we notice a lot of the midfielders. I think Mead this year has been one that's flown under the radar. Maybe not later in the season, but earlier in the season to me, it was definitely... I definitely saw a change, and he played a real key role earlier in the year. Maybe not later in the year, but earlier he definitely did. Who else is there? Lockie Jones is an interesting one as well. I'm going to have him in occasional impact. I've written them down on my screen over there, so that's probably why I'm looking quite across but down. Occasional impact, I think I'll put Lockie Jones into. Overall, I thought he had a pretty average year, Lockie Jones. I think he probably could have even gone in the below expectation tier. Now, I didn't really want to be too, not mean, I don't think mean's the right word, but I didn't want to be too harsh, I think, on some players. Like, earlier in the year was dropping easy marks you got to take in if you're playing football. But I think later in the year he's been a really, really good player for us. I think, for me, it's weird because in footy we normally say the best part of your season is the start of the year, and in the middle phase you kind of fade out and you're not really seeing that much. But I think for Lockie Jones it was the opposite. I think his start of the year was really rough, and then probably after around 8 or 9, I think he really worked into the season after the bye, and I think he's played a really key role in that. Charlie Dixon on the outer, I think we have to get rid of him. We have to retire him. I think he has to retire. I know he said he wanted to play on, and I just feel like we're taking up a list spot, really, if we're keeping Charlie Dixon. I know we're not probably going to get anything for him, obviously, because he's not going to another club. He'll be retiring, staying in Adelaide with his cars. I'm sure he's got plenty to do off-field, has a YouTube channel, so I'm sure he keeps himself busy in that aspect. But I just don't think that he is going to play next year. Logan Evans is in potential yet to be reached. What a man this guy is. I love him. He's probably in my top 3 favourites for Port. I don't really have a favourite for Port. Like, I like Rosie. I've got a poster of him right up there, in actual fact, as you can see, just above the TV right there. I've got a poster of him. You can probably see it up there. I've actually got a frame of him. I ordered it. And, yeah. So, I like them all a lot, but Logan Evans has become one of my favourites quickly. I think he's become a lot of Port Adelaide fans' favourites. No matter your age, I think he's your favourite player. He's played 12 games this year, and just what he's been able to do, it was like, I saw a stat, like, it was like probably like 120 days ago now, maybe. It was probably like 130 days ago now. He wasn't even on an AFL list. Round 10 this year, he wasn't on an AFL list. I think he got picked up round 13 or 14, maybe. His first game was, what was his first game? I think it was an away game. Maybe it was against, I was going to say it was against Freo, but I don't think it was. Maybe St Kilda. I remember him coming in and being like, who the hell was this guy? Is he actually going to be any good for us? But Ken Inkley said, I remember Ken Inkley's press conference when we picked him up, and he said he was a really good kick, a really solid kick. And yeah, took his word for it, and he's been superb. Just the vision he has is superb. Just to finish off, these last couple are going in the elite performance tier. I just feel like my iPad's about to glitch out, so I'll be very quick. Was Miles Bergman. Hold on. But Connor Rosie, up and down year, but I think when you have players like Francis Evans, out of the couple in the top, I think the one that could go down to Connor Rosie. I was tossing up with him for a while, whether I put him in the top or the middle tier, because I don't think he's had an elite year. Like, if you look at his year compared to Horn Francis and Butters, and even Houston, probably not there. I just want to check to make sure, because I wrote it all down. Yeah, I had Miles Bergman also. And I think Miles Bergman's been probably, for me, is one of the ones who is likely for the Coaches Award at the end of the year. I just think he's been superb. Miles Bergman, I think. His intercept marking abilities this year's gone to another level. He plays undersized most weeks since Radically went forward in that game against Carlton in about round 18. He had to play as a key defender, and he's undersized, heavily undersized, I think. Maybe not in terms of weight, but in terms of his height, compared to players like Kerner and the likes of those types, Hogan. He's done a really, really good job. So that's my list. I think it's tough to do a list like this. I really don't like doing this because I love every Port player. Like, I don't really have a least favourite. This channel's not going to be as consistent as my last one. I plan to not have weekly vlogs. I also plan not to do tips. It's going to be more of an analysis channel. So we're going to go through, I plan to have a list analysis series started in probably October. Middle to late October I'll start it, and then probably end it in November. Probably about a month series where I started a Google Sheet form, and each page I have your club's list, and then the players that are out of contract, the players that have said they're leaving, and the players that are coming to your club or possibly coming to your club. And I'll just be doing analysis like that. So I have a couple of videos in the works. I'm also going to do another Port Adelaide exit meeting video where I go through all the players Port have delisted and retired, and just talk about the players we could also get, like Jack Lukosius, like Isaac Cumming, like Harry Perryman, and the like. So hope you've enjoyed this video. I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you very soon.